here. As long as I'm breathing, high and fire, I know I'm still here, holding on. Through the bleeding, through the cheating, I will stay right here, holding on to you. Living life inside a lullaby, erase my fate and sell my dreams. I am screaming, I wear it on my skin. I think it's sinking in and sinking in, sinking in. I am my enemy. I am my enemy. As long as I'm breathing, I am fire. I know I'm still here. As long as I'm breathing, high and fire, I know I'm still here, holding on. Through the bleeding, through the cheating, I will stay right here, holding on. I wear it on my skin. I wear it on my skin. I wear it. I am my enemy. I am my enemy. As long as I'm breathing, I am fire. I know I'm still here. As long as I'm breathing, as long as I'm breathing, high and fire, I know I'm still here, holding on. Through the bleeding, through the cheating, I will stay right here, holding on to you. You with me, or is this love dying soon? Scars of you collect inside this room. Every night I run a race to place my head on my shoulders. Why should I regret the mess of love any longer? If I tell you what hurts, I'll be out on my own. You don't need what I need, so I'll leave it alone. Am I the only one here who doesn't know how to cope? Anymore, anymore, anymore. I'll pretend and pretend
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium eSports coverage of the second race of the round of 10 in the Monday Night Racing presented by Rowdy Energy Season 4 playoffs, the Sim Seats Porsche Challenge, live from iRacing's virtual Österreich in Spielberg, Austria. James Plank, the voice of Podium eSports, alongside Kenneth Bueno and Jacob Hitz. Ryan Bauer, our producer, as always, for the evening cameras brought to us by Dougie Beard. Gentlemen, as we enter our deepest road course race of the season, when the schedule came out, this was a race that grabbed my eye. I don't know if it caught everybody else's, but I have been a very, very big fan of this circuit since its addition to the sim last year. It's the kind of place that just races well with a lot of different vehicles, and I think this Porsche 911 RSR that we see often in M&R competition, especially on the road courses, should be no exception.
I think when you go to a track like this, you get the perfect balance of speed and a lot of technicality, and I think that's what the magic of this track really is, where you have to really keep the speed, keep the momentum wound up, but also you have to make sure that you get through every corner, make sure your car can make it through, and that you can try to find the best exit to blast off the final corners and be able to go back to the straight. But this is really the first permanent road course, James, that we've seen this season, and the first permanent road course race since, I believe, last season. Road America, NASCAR Next Gen cars, that was the last time we raced a permanent road course race. So to bring it back to a track like this and to really understand what it's like to bring these Porsche 911 RSRs to a brand new racetrack in M&R, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of pressure on the playoff drivers as well, and it's going to be a blast.
And a chance for some of the road course drivers to shine, and some of the drivers with a little bit more experience on that side, especially those who might be in the playoffs. Jacob Hitz could see some new faces tonight, could see some faces who need to rebound after a tough finish at Talladega last week.
Yeah, and all the pressure is going to be on those playoff drivers, of course. We're two playoff drivers down tonight, one of them being Kyle Busch. That's really going to hurt him in having any chance to move on. It'll all basically fall on Homestead next week. In the meantime, you're right. New faces up the front that we may not have talked about a ton, but really, you know, it's going to come down to who's got the car at the end of the race. We're not worried about laps this time around. We're just watching the clock. These guys can run, really, I would say, as many laps as they want to. Slow the pace down a little bit so you're not running as many laps, because again, we're just watching the clock. 75 minutes. Once that time's done, this thing is over, and whoever's out in front is going to come away with the win.
Let's take a look at the point standings and show you who came in where. There's your list of drivers that made the playoffs. Kyle Busch, Adam Cabot, Colin Fern, Josh Bilicki, Ryan Vargas, David Shieldhouse, Will Rogers, Preston Partis, Max Kennan, and Raja Caruth to whittle down to 7 and then to 4. Here's the point standings after Talladega. David Shieldhouse still your points leader, as Matt Stelnick outside of the playoffs got the victory, so not too much damage to those up near the front, but Bilicki, Caruth, and Kyle Busch out as it stands. This could be a big opportunity for Bilicki after a big day of announcements for him. Meanwhile, your team standings look like this. Brandon Belt Motorsports still atop the standings ahead of Clearman Sport. It's TMK Motorsports who had a big move up to P3 last week. Cabot eSports with a solid run as well. Spain Station Gaming there. And Speed Inc. with a solid run too. The rest of the drivers going to try and rebound and get a little bit closer to the top of the standings. But for now, it is time to bring you our starting grid, which is presented by Bryant Shock Technologies, your Beef Jerky Unlimited Pole Award winner, Stephen Wilson. Fast time of 1:26.615 seconds to take the top spot over Anders Krohn, Raja Caruth, and DJ Cummings, who won the Road to Glory race just a few moments ago. Start on Road 2. Will Rogers rolls off from P5. Gabe Woods starts 6th. Brad Perez, who won that race at Road America, that Kenneth Bueno referenced at the top of our broadcast, still starts 7th, alongside Adam Cabot, playoff driver, at 8th. Colin Fern, David Shieldhouse, both in the playoffs, both starting inside the top 10.
Josh Bilicki in the 54, playoff driver, round out inside row number 6 with Ryan Vargas, Shady Motor Esports on that outside in P12. Garrett Smithley, James Bickford, the 52 and the 29 will be back to P14. Before we find Joshua Slade rounding out the top 15 and Brian Boris Cook in the 63 machine. Garrett Miller, Max Kennan are the last drivers through the top 18, and Ford Martin in the 07 and TJ Majors in the 2 are the last ones, Jacob, to round out your top 20.
Gary Sexton and Stephen Ellis will make up that row number 11, 21st and 22nd. Justin Malillo, who's come so close the last 2 weeks at winning a race, he starts deep in the grid P23 with Cole Irvin to his outside. Brandon Brown, and then last week's winner, Matt Stolnick, lines up in P26. Case Kallenbach and Seth Eggert, 27th and 28th. Anthony Alfredo, Brett Baldick, 29th and 30th. And then the final three, Michael Massey, Devin Henry, Steve Affont. That's our field of 33 tonight from Spielberg.
Let's get to know this racetrack a little bit better. This is the Österreichring in Spielberg, Austria, in the Styrian province. It opened in 1969 and in this current configuration was reopened in 2011. It is a 2.683 mile, 4.318 kilometer circuit with 10 turns and a lot of elevation changes. You run up the hill to turn 1 and turn 3 and then basically come back down the hill all the way to turn 7 before coming slightly back up at turn 8 and then running way down the hill towards turn 9 and 10. You are basically racing into a hillside in Austria. Tonight we go for 75 minutes with a halfway break at 35 minutes. Drivers will have one faster pair available to them. 3 green white checkers if we need them, but I highly doubt we'll get a full course caution. 3 sets of tires if the drivers need them, and the fuel tank at 55%, so you're going to have to stop at least once. The in-sim time of day for this race is the default day for iRacing, May 15, 2022, right around 3:45 p.m. local time. Air temp 70 degrees Fahrenheit, track temp 93 degrees Fahrenheit, winds headed to north at 2 miles an hour, and no humidity. All that moisture, I suppose, Kenneth Bueno, has dropped towards the sea and away from the mountains where we sit. So we are high, we are giant, we are ready for a very exciting SimSeats Porsche Challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be a beautiful race here. And we're just ready for everybody to get to start on the rolling start here, and they'll go barreling to turn 1. That's one of the more unique parts about this track. And you mentioned, James, the elevation changes where you go through kind of a speed section through 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then you go through kind of a swervy section all the way through about, I'd say, turn 9, all the way through turn 10 in the last portion of the straight before you get to the start-finish line. But that turn 1, very dangerous. So you've seen drivers overshoot. It kind of gets a little kink right after that right-hander when you're hard on the brakes trying to get that rate. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see all of them going in as fast as they can.
For late-breaking stories before we go green flag racing, let's go down to pit road and to Taylor Burris. Taylor.
Well, we have some big exciting news in the world of sports car racing, and it goes to our pole sitter, Stefan Wilson, as he will be contesting in his first attempt of the Rolex 24 in a Porsche in the GT Daytona class. He'll be driving for the Hardpoint team for their endurance program. And I gotta say, it's a very bittersweet moment because 10 years ago, from when the Rolex 24 start, his brother Justin took home the overall victory, and he is going to be excited to see if he can be able to pull this off. But this track is going to be fun, exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing these drivers head to the Niki Lauda curve for one big run.
Justin Wilson, winner of the Rolex 24 some 10 years ago, I believe, Taylor, you correct me, that might have been with Michael Schenk. AJ Allmendinger, I think, also part of that rotation. But plenty of stories that we can cover over the course of 75 minutes. We're glad you're with us here on Podium Esports as Wilson and Anders Krohn, running the Hardpoint colors, go down the final corner, and the green flag comes out. We are underway with racing in the SimSeats Porsche Challenge.
That's Brad Perez. He lost it. He was up inside the top 5 battling for a spot with DJ Cummings. Just lost it. Coming around through the corner, we're going to replay. Looks like we had another one go off. Case Kallenbach has gone off. He was toward the back of the field just further down the racetrack. Here you see the replay. DJ Cummings right behind that pink 60. Comes up off the corner. A little squirrely there. Still in the groove. It just drives it in the corner and loses it, guys. And he just goes all the way to the back of the field.
2 words on that one that are pretty straightforward, Kenneth Bueno. Cold tires. Don't think you need much more of an explanation than that.
It's easy. When you got cold tires, this car does not want to respond, and even more so on the brakes. When you're trying to slow the car down, it can get really hard for the tires to grip it up, and that's the case with Brad Perez and Case Kallenbach, both of them going for a ride. And it looked like Perez was going to have a good run. He was under contention from the 10 and DJ Cummings just inside that 5th position, but unfortunately Perez is going to have to most likely strategize his way out back up through the field instead of just going back through raw pace.
I'm sorry, Kenneth. We've got like 4 guys that wrecked coming out of turn 1 here on this lap. Max Kennan around, Stephen Ellis around. Everybody just came off the corner and crashed. I saw Josh Slate. He went around back here. It looks like Kennan may have gotten the worst of it. He got way too wide, lost it, bounced off of a car. That was Stephen Ellis, sent him back around. I mean, it's just calamity over here on this end of the racetrack. It's lap 2. The tires should be a little warmer by now, and Taylor Burris corrects me. That's turn 2, you're right. But man, oh man, it's just like an ice skating rink for these guys.
Here's a good on-board look with Stephen Ellis. You can see exactly what happened. And yeah, Kennan just completely lost it. Ellis didn't really have anywhere to go, and he tried to check up, but just didn't have enough room, didn't have enough time. So Ellis getting the tow back to pit road to get his car fixed up. Kennan running in 30th. That'll factor into the playoffs potentially. Remember, Kennan is one of our playoff drivers. He could use a solid finish. Came in with a 7-point buffer over Josh Bilicki and Raja Karuth. You figure Pardish may slip and Bush may slip, but realistically, even if those 2 end up not picking up points tonight, you're still going to have, I would assume, maybe 3 or 4 drivers fighting for 3 spots. And I think one person likely will be left on the outside looking in next week, just as I look at how things should pan out based upon what we know.
Yeah, with this road course race, I mean, you can think of this as the wild card. Yes, Talladega with the trucks is there. You see Homestead, Miami with Cup cars, Iowa with the trucks, Nashville, the Super Speedway with the super late models. Those are tracks that are typical of Monday Night Racing. A lot of these drivers are oval competitors, so they know the experience of this. But when you factor in Red Bull Ring with this car, it completely throws everybody off their game, forces maybe some drivers to practice a little bit more, and in turn, when you go on race day, when you go on the racetrack, it becomes just a completely different dynamic. So there was a lot of preparation going into this one, but a lot of unknowns, and I think, unfortunately, James, a lot of drivers found out those unknowns either by getting into crashes or spinning out on the racetrack.
You have to manage this car on cold tires. It is very tricky to find speed in the opening laps of a green flag run when you are on fresh rubber. It does take a few laps for the temps to come up and come in. Here's Ryan Vargas racing from his rig at his house, and just trying to make sure he can use all of the curves that he can. You can see he's pretty much already all the way over on the red and white strips, basically not even on the pavement, but back to the TikTok colors for the first time in a while.
So Vargas back out here in TikTok car, TikTok colors. You love this. It's different, of course. You're used to seeing it on an Xfinity car. He runs it on the ARCA car. A little bit different as we go on board here with Anders Kront. He is right on the back door of his teammate and Stefan Wilson for the lead. And it's kind of like a Pro-Am race. These 2 are the pros. Everybody else is the Am. Will Rogers, who's third, he's more than 5 seconds behind the race leaders.
I think the interesting point here, just looking at the top 5, you would expect Stefan Wilson to be there. You would expect Anders Kront to be there. You would expect Will Rogers to be there. All 3 of them have road racing backgrounds. As we look at Justin Malillo, the Speed 8 driver from Port Jefferson Station, New York, putting the tracks of GG Porsche up and working the wheel. Good shot at the wheel cam there as we try and see what he can and can't do on this racetrack. But the one driver who I think of his own admission probably is a little bit surprised to be this shy from the field so far. How about Raja Caruth running in the 4th position and holding his own. He was actually a half a tenth faster than your race leaders last time by, and just ahead of DJ Cummings, just an onboard from the driver out of Washington, D.C., just trying to chase down Will Rogers.
Yeah, Raja Caruth here, James. We focused on the last couple of weeks, especially talking to him on social media. He put a lot of emphasis on this combo right here with this track and with the Porsche 911 RSR cars. He figured that this was probably going to be the one that was going to be thrown off, other than maybe Talladega with the trucks or Homestead of Miami with cup cars. We know how good he is on the oval side of things, but when it comes to this type of racing, Raja definitely doesn't run as many sports car races as he does oval races on the iRacing platform. So for this race, I think this is starting to pay off, all the practice, all the hard work that he put in to make sure he can be competitive and overcome the cut line in the round of 10. It means a lot for him to be in P4 right now.
Although, in fairness, we talked to him on Saturday, and we said that he really wanted to dig into this, and he said himself, too, after the race, that he really wanted to try and get better at multiple disciplines of racing, not just the oval racing that we know he's got some prowess and speed in. Let's get a good look at Brandon Brown from Race XR, who's got a rearview mirror and maybe now a side door full of Brad Perez. We'll duck down to the inside. This is over towards the end of the racetrack, the final 2 corners on the circuit, which would be 9 and 10. For those of you counting numbers, they come through turn 10 now, down onto the front straightaway before they begin to make their charge back up the hill. Brown currently running last car in the top 20. Perez trying to rebound after his early spin. However, after running just about last in this race a few laps ago, I don't think he'll complain too much about P19. And remember, everybody's got a faster pair to work with. Everybody's got a brake that they have to work with. So this field will be bunched up at least one more time. This is almost sort of the opening stint where you get to figure out things and learn things as we go on board with Norway's Anders Krohn, currently running runner-up to Stefan Wilson.
Yeah, these guys just continue to scoot away from everybody else up here at the front. It's kind of really spread out throughout the rest of the field. But you talked about Raj, he's sitting P4. That really does a lot of good for him in the championship fight. Looking ahead to Homestead next week, coming into today, he was looking okay. Not really. He was 5 points out. He was P9, tied with Josh Bilicki. So a great run from Raja Caruth tonight is really what he's looking for to make life easy for him next week. Plus, he's got to keep in mind that Preston Pardis isn't here. Pardis was in after last week. He's going to be on the outside looking in next week at Homestead. So this is really helping Raja Caruth out. He's just got to keep it up the rest of the night.
Yeah, this would be big for him as we go on board with Garrett Smithley running in the 9th spot, trying to chase down Josh Bilicki, who had a very, very big day. But to slide back, before we touch on Josh's story, let's go back to Taylor Burris and talk a little bit more about Raja Caruth and DJ Cummings.
Well, Raja Caruth is definitely going to be one to watch in this race. Of course, fresh off a win at Homestead with the eNASCAR International Pro Invitational. He picked up the win this past weekend, but also one of the things he'd have to keep in mind is this is a great opportunity for him to learn some things with these sports cars, as we know that the eNASCAR International Series will be working in multiple different road courses, including circuits such as Zolder later in the season. As for DJ Cummings, he picked up the win in the Road to Glory race just a few moments ago in an absolutely dominant fashion. He said in his winner's interview that he will be looking forward to see if he can come out on top here tonight, that he has what it takes to battle for a podium finish, if not maybe, if the cards play right, for a win here tonight if he's able to do so. But as we brought out, Josh Bilicki Pike has some big news just announced earlier today.
Big news that he's going to go racing with Spire. Taylor Burris, tell us a little bit more about the news he put out today.
He certainly did. He is definitely going to be driving for that number 77 for Spire Motorsports, so it's going to be great to see what he can accomplish in that number 77, being teammates with Corey LaJoie in the number 7. As in a matter of fact, you just see he's got the number 77 on the side of his Porsche 911 RSR. Going to be exciting to see what he can do with a team that to watch, as they already have a win in the NASCAR Cup Series a couple of seasons at Daytona. So keep an eye to see what they can do at the start of the season opener at the Daytona 500.
Big congratulations to Josh Bilicki, who, mind you, won on a road course. I believe that actually was the last race we had on a road course in this series. We went to Daytona and went racing with the Mazda MX-5 Miata Cup cars. So big congratulations to Josh Bilecki on behalf of all of us at Monday Night Racing and Podium eSports on his full-time Cup Series ride in 2022. Meanwhile, here's Stephen Ellis for the Hockey News Racing out of Toronto, Ontario. Certainly a road specialist by his own admission. A little bit more of a road racer than an oval racer, but just not had the luck. Already had to take the fast apparent wreck pretty early, and will very much be looking forward to the Midway race break in order to get himself back in sync. Meanwhile, David Schildhouse here up to P9. He's going to clear Josh Bilecki, and that will be big for the playoffs. That's two playoff drivers fighting for position as they close out this lap.
Yeah, right now, James, this is all tussling for some well-needed points, and all three of them playoff drivers, Smithley, Schildhouse, Bilecki, all within range of each other going back to turn one, and it is just a cluster full of all of them as they go back to the corner. There's a look at the purple Porsche 911, Dax Smithley leading that bit of a trio, and then you have Ryan Vargas, Colin Fern, even more playoff drivers behind them, so even more points can be gained on behalf of this group. This is probably going to be one of the most important battles we see all night if it stays like this, James, within this first segment, because we know how close they are in competition. We know they've been able to get multiple wins throughout this season, and so to have all of them clustered together is really going to matter at the end. Actually, scratch that. Smithley not a playoff driver this season, was one last season, but everybody back there up to Colin Fern are playoff competitors.
Right, he was not in the playoffs this year, but just behind him, David Schildhouse not only is in the playoffs, but is your current points leader entering tonight's race here at the Österreich. Anders Krohn still in second. He and Stefan Wilson have just sort of hit a groove and stayed there, running right around the 127 threes, 127 fours, 127 fives. They've been right in the mix. Nobody else has really been able to keep touch. Carruth has fallen off pace by a few seconds. Will Rogers is there. He might be one of the only ones that could potentially run up and go grab Stefan Wilson and Anders Krohn. Meanwhile, David Schildhouse and Garrett Smithley beginning to have a battle heat up for P8, Jacob.
Yeah, and I can tell you what I noticed as we were talking about Schildhouse in this battle the first time around. Something or someone hit the back of David Schildhouse's car. You can see the damage on the back of the car, not with that shot, but you'll see it in a moment as he's just trying to close in on Garrett. And I was wondering if maybe that back end damage could have slowed down David a little bit, something that he would have to look at once he comes to pit road. But I mean, you can see the damage on the back of the car. It doesn't affect the wing, it's all down low. But it really doesn't seem to be doing too much to his performance because he is staying right in the tire tracks of that 52 Garrett Smithley.
Wondering how much he's going to try and push to make this move now. That's always the big question because, again, we know we're going to have a yellow flag and a full course yellow to bring the field back together at the 35-minute mark. So is it worth trying to push at this point, get it Plano? Or if you're pushing, are you trying to build a notebook for later as Raja Carruth just hanging out in front of Will Rogers here?
I think to answer your question, James, it is going to be all about building the notepad. And I mentioned earlier that this is a wild card race in the playoffs. So for most of them, they really want to take some notes here. They really want to see, okay, what works when I push here? What works if I don't push here and I stay a little bit timid? What can I do here to manage my tires? What can I do with my fuel situation? There are so many things to factor in on this type of racetrack and this type of event, being a timed event instead of a lapped event here, as Rogers kind of lags back here on Raja Carruth, who's now in third. But this is all about experimentation, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't, and then by the time you get to the break, you have a lot more knowledge, a lot more intel about what you can and can't do going to the final stage, which arguably is going to be the most important. It's going to be for the race win, and we're probably going to see some fuel strategy there as well. So just making sure you can experiment, be able to make sure what you can and can't do is going to be very important as you watch the battle for the lead.
Yeah, these two have just been clicking off laps way better than anybody else. They've stretched it out to a solid 8 seconds ahead of that battle between Raja Carruth and Will Rogers, which is becoming less and less of a battle as the laps progress. Carruth is maintaining pace. He's actually not terribly far off the pace that Wilson and Krohn are setting, but Rogers is beginning to fall back and fall towards the clutches.
Oh my! Who was that? Case Kallenbach almost took out the leaders. You saw it there. He got wide. He's a lap down trying to stay out of the way and turned it back across the racetrack right in front of Stefan Wilson. Holy cow.
That was close. Let's see the replay and see just how close, because it was a very scary moment here. Colin Bach just, it's almost like the car drifted on him. He didn't necessarily hit the apex correctly, and then all of a sudden tried to slide it and came across, and yeah, maybe about a car length and a half tops between Colin Bach and Stephen Wilson, which, remember, we've had calamity in road course races like that before where lap traffic has hurt the leaders. I think back to Lime Rock last June when we had someone wrecked coming under the bridge, went out of the final corner. They really threw a wrench in that race, and I think might have helped Stephen Wilson get at least a podium in that. As we now go back on board with David Schilthouse, this once again the battle for 9th and 8th. He's trying to work around Garrett Smithley, but he hasn't necessarily found a hole yet.
Lime Rock, James, isn't the only place that we've seen the leaders get into each other in the latter portions of the race. At Homestead of Miami Roval, we had the leaders get collected in an incident going to turn 1. We know how treacherous that corner was at the high speeds and turning on to the left and going to that very shallow corner into the infield at Homestead of Miami. Well, we've seen a lot of drama there. That could have been huge drama between Colin Bach and the fastest cars of the field. And that's the thing about this track, is that when you go off, most of the time, often than not, you have some gravel, you have some grass ready to treat you to the best service. And so when Colin Bach got into it, slid over the track, tried to rebound, and that car just slid. He had nowhere to go. You have to be a passenger there to keep that car caught in that case, and then almost got into the leaders. Thank goodness nobody got any damage and were able to stay clean for the most part.
It's Gary Sexton out of Pennsylvania, I guess trying to have a not despicable race, if his get up for tonight is any indication, Jacob Hitz?
Something like that. I did watch him earlier, though, get into a corner, and then coming off, he got into Ford Martin and turned him around, so it hasn't been completely despicable free for Gary Sexton, but nonetheless, he's relatively kept that 13 clean, and he's doing a pretty solid job. Where in the world is he? How about
18th.
18th, yeah, how about 18th? I was looking for him, he's right in front of me.
So, Sexton running at 18th. Meanwhile, reminds you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy is brought to you by BOOSTED.BIZ. Boosted builds a custom platform for your brand to sell your products, and they take care of everything on the back end for you, so pay nothing up front and let them handle the rest. To get started with your online store, build your brand and get boosted by visiting boosted.biz today. David Schilthouse continuing to apply the pressure here, and he's going to get underneath Garrett Smithley, going right past the hill. I think that might be turn 4 officially. It is, as they go through 4 into the 5-6 complex. Schilthouse finally has that 8th position, and will work towards trying to run down Gabe Wood just up the road. And winner with these cars, I believe, at Homestead Miami Speedway back in Season 3, Kenneth Plano, so he's got some road course experience too.
Trouble, we just talked about Gary and Brad Perez. They are crashing. Oh, and Gary has a lot of damage. I think he made a mistake on his zone. Yeah, he locked it up and then got wide, came back across the track and nowhere for Brad to go. And now Gary's going to drive it away. This is off. Oh, I was hoping the track max was going to help me out, but no, it's just a circle. So I'm not quite sure where this is out of the racetrack. But Gary, we just talked about him inside the top 20, and now he's got damage, a lot of damage to that 13.
Over in turn 4, right where Schilthouse made the pass on Smithley, and yeah, just coming down the hill into the braking zone, he locked it up. Not much needed there, and here's your run down the back straightaway too. If you're trying to set yourself on the racetrack, this is the run down to turn 4, where a lap ago Sexton locked it up right about here at that 200-meter marker and got things totally turned around. So this is the spin. There's the hit with Brad Perez. Thankfully, I think neither of them have used their faster car yet, so they'll be riding around in the back for the next 30 minutes, but they still have a chance. But yeah, I locked it up a little bit, shot it wide, and then caught that oh-so-slippery sand on corner exit. That's not the first time I've seen that here at the circuit, and it probably won't be the last time we see that tonight. But Sexton immediately coming down pit road, I imagine he may go ahead and use his faster pair now.
I mean, it was the same situation there with Collenbach. When he got into the gravel, almost spun the car out, and this was, I think, this scenario being the worst case scenario where Gary Sexton went around and officially got into the car right there in Brad Perez. And Smithley looks like he overshot what looks to be turn 9. Gonna lose a lot of position and lose a lot of time here to Schildhaus. And I believe Colin Fern gonna be able to potentially get position. So I think off tracks here, James, are really mattering more than drivers thought it would at the opening laps of this SimSeats Porsche Challenge. When you get off track, chances are you're gonna be in grave danger. We've seen that a couple of times already.
Troy Martin running the Fox Sports app machine. He's trying to, I think, keep his focus and not think about a certain hand egg team from the state of Tennessee that might be a little bit occupied next weekend that we know that Ford loves. But for now, just keeping his P's and Q's minded. Meanwhile, TJ Majors just a little bit further up the racetrack in 60. Right behind him, you got Forrest Cook from Joe Gibbs Racing running the Bitcoin machine and just trying to keep him at bay, keep everybody else behind, and try and go get Garrett Miller, who's just up the road by, call it a 2-second gap-ish.
That's the game plan now. Just try and catch up and hurry up and get what you can here, because we are closing in on this halfway point. So these guys are really gonna have to push things to the limit. You talked about Gary, how he made it to pit road. Yeah, kinda. He came off turn 9 and spun it and just wound up on the access road and then had to do a 3-point turn and eventually got it to pit road. He got his faster pair. He's now down and away. So a rough night for Gary. Gets worse in that sense that, oh, well, more trouble for him. Spins it just trying to get it to pit road. That shows the amount of damage that he had on the race car, though, guys.
Lots of damage to his machine, and I guess maybe a despicable run after all in the not-so-great sense, as, again, it's still Wilson and Chrome. These two clear by almost 11 seconds over Raja Karut, so you're not missing much at the front, but David Schildhaus continuing to make the charge after starting in the 10th position. He just got past Gabe Wood. Just look at the replay. This is coming up the hill to turns 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think when Jacob mentioned that the rear-end damage on Schildhaus may have affected him, I don't think it's affecting him really at all. It seems as though he's picked up the pace ever since he got that damage. It looked to be on the opening laps of this event, so Schildhaus is definitely starting to click in lap times, and he is starting to eat in onto the gap that DJ Cummings has on him in P6, and he just got around defending Porsche 911 RSR winner Gabe Wood. Remember, he went to victory lane at Homestead Miami Speedway just last season to get himself and to continue his run through the M&R playoffs. And so Schildhaus, though, picking it up at this point in the Advanced.GG. Porsche 911 is definitely doing good. We'll see if he has anything for Cummings, Cabot, or anybody through the top 5.
Just how many spaces can you gain? You're not really seeing too many drivers charge all that much, but one driver we've not talked about much, but the man currently in possession of the hard charger award of 16 positions, currently running in the 13th spot after riding in 29th. Coming down pit road right now, it's Anthony Alfredo, and if he's coming down pit road, then Taylor Burris. Let's see if you've got any more information.
Taking a look at Anthony Alfredo right now, he's going to come down towards pit road to try to get those fuels serviced up, as well as make sure he stays within that window, which is going to be about 20 laps or so. Now, drivers are trying to get on pit road before that halfway point in the caution break that we'll be seeing here momentarily. So drivers trying to utilize that. A couple of more cars also have joined the ranks of coming down pit road besides Anthony Alfredo. We just saw Brandon Brown exit off, Seth Eggert as well make his way off of pit road. Keep an eye on a couple of other drivers who are going to be making their way down pit road before the end of the halfway break, which closes here in a few moments. Here trying to get some tires and fuel on that car, and we'll pull out and away here momentarily.
And to be fair, not quite halfway. We've still got 15 minutes left before we hit that mark in the race, but you've got 2 leaders there, well clear of everybody else. I think the bigger question will be who decides to come down pit road. That was a short pit of maybe about 2 or 3 laps from Anthony Alfredo. So we could see maybe 3-4 laps perhaps before everybody else decides to come in. But you figure, Kenneth Cueto, they're probably in before too long as we look at La Mirada, California's Ryan Vargas.
Yeah, we're going to see drivers pit around that 20-lap mark. I'm not sure how far they can extend it. I'm not sure whether 20 is kind of the hard cut, but where you're pretty much running out of fuel and you have to come down pit road regardless of the scenario. But around 20 laps is pretty much where that window either starts to open. It's in that range where you're already thinking about going down for some 4 fresh tires and some fuel to make it all the way to the halfway mark. And we're probably going to be expecting at some point, James, drivers to pit around that second stint. We know that that second stage after the halfway break is the longest part of this event in terms of 40 minutes, and after the 35 that we'll have here before the halfway caution. So at this point, we're going to see everybody down pit road, and I believe there's a car on the inside wall in the middle of the track. It looks to be Gary Sexton, I believe.
No,
may
Brett.
have had some trouble.
That's Brett Baldbeck that got around. I assume he was a lap down, trying to get through the leaders, and I think he just lost it all by his own. And yeah, he got wide coming through that corner and got into the gravel, and he actually followed Devin Henry, who did the same thing. Baldick just couldn't keep control of it, and he spun it. Now, you're going to see these guys pit soon because their pits are going to close in less than 5 minutes. So these guys are going to be racing that. Once they come in, you know, they can't wait too long. Otherwise, pits are going to be closed, and they're really going to be in trouble.
I have a feeling we're going to see some driver. I don't know which driver, but there will be at least one driver who tries to stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and hit that window right on the money and wait too late. Get told they come down pit road when it is closed and end up serving some sort of penalty. Not too many other drivers in yet. Steve Afon has come down. Brett Baldock is in. Seth Eggert is in. But everybody in the top 20 staying out on the racetrack at this time. See whether or not that changes over the course of, I'll call it, what, the next 3 minutes or so as we look on board with Devin Henry racing out of Arizona. Just trying to click off a few more laps, get to the yellow flag. Here's the first car 1 lap down, so he'd be getting his lap back if we got the yellow flag right now.
Yeah, that's going to bring everybody together. And I think at this point, everything is thinned out. Drivers have had incidents. Drivers have had mistakes to the point where they're already thinking about what they're going to do with the halfway break. I think it's a sigh of relief knowing that there's going to be a caution midway through this race. And I remember we had the same conversation, James, back at Lime Rock not too long ago, where there were a bunch of drivers who had problems at that track with the Mazda Miatas. And then they were just hoping at some point for the halfway caution to come out. And then they kind of wiped the sweat off of their brow and said, okay, I can restart. I can get myself a new race here instead of having to worry about what I did in the first stage or what happened with contact with others in that first stage. So we're probably going to see a lot of drivers, including Devin Henry near the rear of the field, do that. And I believe one more on pit road. DJ Cummings, your Road to Glory winner earlier tonight. He's also coming for service.
He's in, as is Colin Fern, as is Garrett Smithley, as is Ryan Vargas. Taylor Burris. Any more from him?
Well, keeping an eye on these drivers here as we're down to the 2-minute warning before the pits are closed. So drivers trying to get their last few minutes in on pit road. Keep an eye to see if a couple of more drivers who do. One driver decided to avoid coming into pit road. That was TJ Majors, made a hard left back onto the racing circuit. Josh Bilicki also will join the ranks. Garrett Smithley trying to finish up his pit stop. As we're waiting to see if a couple of more cars will decide, Joshua Slate decides to stay out. Ford Martin. Max Kennick is coming towards the pit entrance. Ford Martin decides to come down this time by. So a couple of drivers towards the back half of the field is trying to utilize this opportunity to get pit stops, to have an opportunity for track positions later on when we get to that caution at the halfway point. As we see the leaders come in, Stefan Wilson and Anders Krohn have decided to come together. Here we go. This is going to be exciting to see how this will play out as they are there. 60 seconds till the pits will be closed. Any more drivers coming down? Raja Karouf decides to stay out. Will Rogers coming down pit road, followed by Adam Cabot, who will also make the road. And I believe David Schildhouse will join the ranks of coming down pit road. That answer will be yes. Gabe Wood. So pretty much everyone except Raja Karouf is going to be coming down a pit road this time by, as we should be seeing the pit close signal happening momentarily. James Bickford's going to cut it close as we see the field working their way into the pits.
Very tight. Bickford's going to stay out. Garrett Miller is going to come in. What does Brad Perez do? He will won't stay out. Or no, got on the brakes very quickly there with less than 15 seconds to go before the pits close. Same for TJ Majors. I don't know if Josh Slate's going to make it in time, but he'll stay out anyway. So everybody that wanted to come down pit road, I think, has made their stop. And now we don't have to worry about pits. We just worry about racing for the next 10 minutes before we get our midway race break and our competition caution.
Really interesting decision here for Raja. I mean, all the other playoff drivers, for the most part, pitted. Yeah, Max Kennon's the only one on my sheet that has not made a stop, and he was toward the back of the field. So this is a really bold strategy for Raja. I'm curious to see how this is going to play out, because everybody he was racing around decided to come onto pit road. The good news for him, though, is he's got a 33-second lead over some of these other guys that are trying to chase him down.
So he's got some space, and provided he doesn't make any mistakes, he'll probably be the leader coming into that yellow flag. The question will be, if he comes down during the caution like we would expect him to, will he have enough fuel to make it to the end, or is he going to have to make a stop in the middle of that final green flag run? That's the big question as we get a good look on board with Adam Cabot, and we'll see whether or not Caruth can make up enough ground here to be okay, but you would think he's likely at a strategy disadvantage just because he still has to stop twice. Everybody else, most likely, only needing to stop once before they make it to the end of this race. Now, we will remind you at this time that our broadcast of the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy is brought to you by Battle Beaver. There's everything you need for your next custom controller, console, or PC skin. With options for PlayStation, Xbox, GameCube, and more, Battle Beaver has everything you need to make your system look exactly the way you want it. Go to BattleBeaverCustoms.com to pick up your next skin today. So Caruth out in front by 30 seconds, but he's also one of seven drivers, I suppose, in the field yet to pit, although one of those is Michael Massey, who's just pulled it down the front straightaway.
And here comes Raja.
And now here comes, okay. All right, so Raj is going to take the penalty for the closed pit road to make sure that he can make it on one more stop. How intriguing that is. He will sacrifice the track position, will sacrifice the points, will get held on pit road as we go on board with James Bickford. And where does Raja Caruth come out in all of this once it all wraps up? That's what we'll watch for once he exits. Meanwhile, James Bickford here, who you see on screen, currently running in P2, but he, I think, is going to try and maybe stay out all the way until our competition caution, which is less than 5 minutes away.
But I'm not exactly sure, James, if Bickford has saved enough fuel. I mean, we looked at Caruth, and when he stayed out, we were kind of puzzled, and we were like, I'm not sure whether he saved enough or whether he can even save enough fuel to get all the way to the end. And you can hear James Bickford hear this out of his Porsche 911 RSR. He is crawling back to turn 2.
He's giving up the race lead to Will Rogers and Adam Cabot, and is clutching. This could get very scary there. Look at Gabe Wood, who had to get on the brakes hard to make sure he didn't run over Bickford, who was trying to stretch this all the way to the end of this first green flag stint and this competition caution. So a strategy play from Bickford. We'll see how many spots he gains. He was running around, I'm going to call it 12th or 13th. He started 14th before he made this decision. Where does he end when we get the yellow? That's the big question as to whether or not his strategy play was or was not worth it, as Will Rogers is going to be your leader, most likely, unless Adam Cabot can run him down in the final minute and a half.
Well, and here's the thing. We got trouble. Max Cannon's around. We got playoff implications. Max Cannon is... I'm sorry, he's on pit road. I can't read. I heard Vargas apologize over the radio, looked down and saw Cannon was stopped. Didn't look over and see, wait, he's on pit road. Now, back to Bickford here. Back to Bickford here. I'm just scared of Bauer, that's all. With Bickford, he's got to have to go another 3. Okay, he's coming in this time. I was going to say, he's going to have to go another 2, maybe 3 laps, just depending on where he's at when the caution comes.
So James Bickford finally coming in, and I almost wonder if we had a second competition caution, if these drivers might have taken some of that data and taken it into their notebooks You think some of the folks like Bickford, like Caruth, who are pitting here under what is technically a closed pit lane may end up being hurt as DJ Cummings continues to fight for the third position with Gabe Wood.
And it seems as with this pit stop occurrence with James Bickford and Raja Caruth and a couple others who also, I believe, stayed out on the racetrack until this halfway break. It shuffled everybody up, and like you mentioned, Will Rogers is there, but here comes the caution out on the racetrack. So I believe this may indeed be, James, the official halfway mark of tonight's SimSeeds Porsche Challenge. Bickford has gone down for the pits, and Will Rogers will be, in turn, our quote-unquote stage winner.
If we were doing stages, yes, you'd be right about that. But we are going to take a side-by-side break so you don't miss any of the action of this SimSeeds Porsche Challenge. More coverage of the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy on Podium eSports just after this.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in endorsed series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars, and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone, and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Maconi Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Maconi Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Maconi Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MaconiSetupShop.com and learn why Maconi Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way. Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple delight, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at BigGreenEgg.com. That's BigGreenEgg.com.
Howdy, I'm Ashley, and this is my partner Frankie. There's no better time than right now to purchase a home or refinance your current mortgage. My company, Wyndham Capital, has amazing rates and a seamless process to get your loan across the finish line. Give me a shout for all of your mortgage needs.
Welcome back to coverage of the SimSeats Porsche Challenge, the playoffs for Season 4 of the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy. James Pike, Kenneth Bueno, Jacob Hitz here, and as these drivers get the wave around, we are going to turn immediately to our iRacing Midway race break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. As things cycle through here, going to be a little bit tricky to make sure that we get this all right, but we're going to try and sort this out as best we can. It's Will Rogers, who is your race leader at the yellow flag halfway through tonight's event, ahead of Adam Cabot. Anders Krohn holds the third position just ahead of Stefan Wilson. Garrett Miller and Ryan Vargas running fifth and sixth. Gabe Wood currently holds the seventh position. Eighth at this moment belongs to Garrett Smithley. DJ Cummings holds P9, and 10th Kenneth Bueno goes to David Schildhouse.
The biggest mover all night up to this point, Anthony Alfredo currently rides in P11. Brian Boris Cook in the 63 machine is behind him in P12, followed by playoff driver Joshua Balicki in the 54. He's 13th at the moment, with league owner Ford Martin for Crypto Autosport in P14. TJ Majors in the 2 rounds out the top 15, before you find the 41 of Matt Stallneck, the 86 of Colin Fern, the 1 machine of Joshua Slate, 19 to what looks to be, I believe, James Bickford in the 29, and rounding out your top 20 is the 44 of Roger Carruth.
21st is Brad Perez for the moment. He's still on pit road, so he's going to drop to the back here more than likely. Then it's Justin Malillo, Max Kennan, Case Kallenbach, Gary Sexton, who's back on the lead lap now with the wave arounds. Also getting waved around was Kallenbach, Devin Henry, who's 26th, Steve Affont, Seth Eggert, Brett Baldick, Brendan Brown. That's your top 30. Cole Irvin is on the lead lap now as well in 31st. Stephen Ellis is 1 lap down in 32nd, and Michael Massey is out of the race.
Worth noting here, just a small note from race control, that Raja Carruth, Josh Slate, Max Kennan, and James Bickford were penalized for pitting while the pits were closed before we got the yellow flags that will factor into where they restart. But for now, that concludes our iRacing Midway race break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on track today at iRacing.com. Also a reminder that tonight's broadcast is brought to you by our friends at Rowdy Energy. 2-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Kyle Busch and beverage entrepreneur Jeff Church have collaborated to develop Rowdy Energy, with a proprietary enhanced energy formula consisting of time-release caffeine, sugar reduction ingredients, amazing taste, and hydration levels above the leading sports drinks. Rowdy Energy is a cleaner, smarter energy drink. You can visit rowdyenergy.com to place your order today. A little whisper in from our now Simi award-winning producer Ryan Bauer. Picked that up over the course of the past week, that it is the energy drink of choice for him. Get a good look at the broadcast team, at least in name to start. James Pike here, the voice of Podium eSports, alongside Kenneth Bueno, Jacob Hitz, Ryan Bauer, our producer. Cameras this evening provided by Dougie Beard, and socials courtesy of Cameron Arbordon. Here are our faces, which you may or may not want to see. I don't know. That's a personal preference type thing. You probably want to see Kenneth and Jacob more than you need to see whatever on earth this is. I don't know. Maybe I should just sort of slide over here. But for now, folks, how are we doing as we let the good people on screen?
Hey, Pike, I mean, you got some drip. I think you should show it off a little bit. But, I mean, I think for this race, I mentioned the notepad the drivers were taking earlier on tonight. They're going to use it. They're going to have to use it because this is a longer stint. Actually, it's around 30 minutes, so probably not as long. But pit road is going to be imminent. Pit stops are going to happen. We're going to see probably a lot of chaos like we saw in this first stage, Jacob. And it's going to be a lot. James, I don't know why you're still leaning over to the right. You can,
all right, fine.
you can come back. You can come back.
Jeez, okay. All right. So,
Well, here's the thing with what we've got going on. We've got different pit strategies now compared to earlier on in this race. We just had a couple of guys. Vargas was one, Alfredo was another. I think PJ Cummings also just pitted here this lap before they're coming to green to try and have that little extra fuel, that little advantage. We saw some others do it. Colin Fern did it. So these playoff drivers are kind of splitting the field on how they want to strategize for the second half of the race. We were kind of told in the beginning this was going to be a two-stop race. Most of these guys have already pitted twice. They need to pit again. Even though they just topped off here at this caution, they cannot make it all the way to the checkered flag. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with pit stops.
I think the intriguing thing here, I'm surprised no one decided to pit before the window closed in that first stint and then decided to wait until middle of this upcoming stint to pit. You figure that's the simplest way to handle pit stops, but maybe people wanted more fuel, maybe wanted a little bit more insurance, maybe they wanted fresh tires. Who knows how this pans out? And there are some drivers who did take fresh tires over the course of the yellow flag, which is the easiest way to do that without losing too much time, since a stop with tires in these cars usually runs somewhere in the ballpark of 35 to 40 seconds. So there is some use for this yellow if you need fresh rubber, but you also have to be mindful of cold tires. As we go back to green flag racing here, Will Rogers, Adam Cabot back on the gas pedal for green flag racing once again in the SimSeats Porsche Challenge. And look at the run from Anders Krohn to immediately get to the inside of Cabot. And I wonder if Stefan Wilson might follow suit.
We know how strong James, that 47 and the 25 have been, and you see Anders Krohn straight to the inside of Adam Cabot. He'll immediately take P2, and this is the run up the hill to turn 2. It'll be Stefan Wilson all the way on the inside lane. He'll have the preferred lane going into this corner here, and he'll be able to maneuver. They're 3 wide behind them. I saw Brian Boris Cook, one of the drivers in that, Joshua Balicki, I believe, all the way on that inside. Everybody single files through, and I believe no incidents out of turn 2.
Somehow, I'm surprised, to be honest. I figured we'd see something here, and I'm not necessarily convinced we're done just yet, because Matt Stolnick and DJ Cummings nearly crossed each other up on the exit of 3, but for the moment, at least, it's clean all the way through to 4 as the field now begins to make their way down the hill, this very treacherous...
Oh, there goes Stolnick!
Matt Stolnick goes wide. Didn't necessarily wreck, per se, but he did go wide. Don't think he spun the car, though, so we'll be okay otherwise. Get a look at the replay here, see how Stolnick decided to overdrive turn 4. Everybody else, though, out front beginning to stretch it out. We're beginning to see the conga line form as a little bit further back, Garrett Miller's managed to clear David Schulthouse for 7th.
Stolnick got help to get out there. Don't let it be fooled. He deflected again. He spins it. He gets hit from behind by Britt Baldicht. This is coming through, I believe, turn 9. He hits him again. We've got a big crash. Baldicht in the tires. This is, I think, turn 8 or turn 9. Stolnick lost it all by his own. Got over the curb and lost it. You'll see the replay here. As he comes around, he couldn't hold the brake, I guess. Comes around. He gets on the wrong side of the curb. Right here is where he gets on the wrong side. It just kicks it sideways. Gary Sexton does an incredible job. He goes off course, but he misses it. And here comes Stolnick back across the track and sending the 46 into the tires. He got some assistance from, I believe it was Josh Slate earlier to push him off, but this time it's all by himself that gets him off course.
The first contact there with Baldicht was incidental. The second one was the result of Stolnick not holding the brake, so that's why they ran into each other twice in that incident. But as it stands, Stolnick falling way, way back into 31st. Meanwhile, Will Rogers is going to have his work cut out for him at the front because he's got Anders Krohn all over him entering the turn 8-9 complex where Stolnick and Baldicht wrecked just a lap ago.
And these are road course veterans racing at its finest. Krohn now going to make the move. He's going to be door to door with the 24 going into the corner. Rogers will have the preferred inside groove. And so Krohn will wait for just a moment. They'll come off of turn 10 and go all the way to turn 1. Big wiggle out of the 24. And now the 47 will have the opportunity. Got a bit of draft, a bit of help. Not enough to make a move to turn 1. So Rogers will hold the lead. And that brings in the 17 of Adam Cabot into P4.
So a 4-car battle for the race lead on a road course here in the Austrian hills there. We could say, to Taylor Burris's point, and I'll see if I can steal his thunder decently well, that the hills are indeed alive with the sound of music, but I would say in this case they're alive with the sound of these Porsche engines, which are pretty loud if you've had the chance to hear these things in person, they are certainly not quiet. And I think that's the easiest way to describe it, as Anders Krohn and Will Rogers go door to door, making their way down the hill towards turn 4. Same thing for Stefan Wilson and Adam Cabot. I wonder if Wilson might just be trying able to keep pace with his Norwegian stablemate, because these two were the class of the field in this opening stint. And I wonder if Wilson's not careful, he may end up losing Krohn trying to fight Rogers for second.
Krohn set him up perfectly right there. Krohn backed off. Rogers sent it in deep into turn number 2. Krohn turned it more, was able to get on the gas coming off the corner and just rock it right by him. Perfect way to set it up. And he's just going to leave Rogers in the dust here. I think Rogers it didn't seem like he had the car under him. He was getting squirrely a couple times on that last lap, and that just allowed Krohn to get to him, set him up, and blow right on by him.
Also of note, and I believe by my math, if I'm counting, this is the second time in, I believe, the past 4 races, I think, if my math is right. Or maybe well, 3 or 4, depending on whether or not you count the All-Star race. But Anthony Alfredo and Raja Karuth got into it again back in the field in turn 4, and Alfredo went around. So one to note for the mental ledgers is Krohn now clear of Rogers by maybe, call it half a second or a car length or so. But Rogers had a little bobble out of turn number 3, might allow Stefan Wilson to get a run down this, I guess the closest thing to a back straightaway here at the Österreich-Ring, and maybe, just maybe, set up a move into turn 4. Let's watch it all from Adam Cabot's on board.
Cabot has the front row seat. Looks like a bit of smoke there from the tire. Will Rogers trying to make sure he can maximize the braking going into the corner. And I think Krohn and Wilson have kind of overwhelmed this 24. We saw that opening stint, James, at the 24. Rogers didn't do the best of managing his tires. Had a lot of strength in that opening run for the first couple of laps, and then all of a sudden just started to fall off in pace, and that brought in Raja Karuth, brought in other drivers within the top 5 to overcome him on position. So I think Rogers is stuck in a compromising spot, because now everybody, including Wilson and Cabot, are starting to overwhelm this Coca-Cola machine, and so Rogers may be in a tough position by the time Wilson can get around him, and also playoff driver Adam Cabot trying to get as many points as he can. That hurts Cabot, though, out of turn 10. Wobbled just a bit, I believe got into the grass, trying to keep the accelerator in it. He loses a bit of time, but Wilson still on the rear end of the 24 nonetheless.
See, this is an interesting place for Will Rogers, because we know he's got plenty of speed on the road courses, even if he may be under fire from Stefan Wilson at this point. But Rogers won that Season 2 title in particular because of his prowess both on the road courses and the ovals. He was, in that season, arguably the most consistent driver across all disciplines of racing that we tackle here in Monday Night Racing. And that's something that I think he's going to keep in his back pocket. Yes, he'd like to win this race, but I think he'd take a podium here and wouldn't necessarily mind it all that much, knowing that he's got way more experience on the ovals than some of these more seasoned road racers, and should likely be in for some good finishes at maybe a Miami or in Iowa or a Nashville Superspeedway or an Auto Club, the final 4 races we have this season, that you might not necessarily be able to bank on if you're some of the folks that might get a little bit more road inclined instead.
Yeah, Will Rogers kind of has that balance that some of these other guys may not necessarily have experience-wise. He's good on the ovals, he's good on the road courses. You don't see that a ton. You've got the really good road course racers, so you got the really good oval guys. You don't really have a lot of crossover. But now, you're going to have to keep in mind, with fuel here, he's up on the podium for now, but whenever he has to pit, that's really going to impact where he finishes, because if he has to pit early, it could cost him, even though he will have fresher tires early on to start reeling guys in. If he pits late, that could cost him, even though he'll have fresher tires toward the end of this deal. So the pit strategy is really going to determine where these guys wind up, less so, I think, than the speed they have, even though Anders Krohn right now, he's going.
So Krohn and Wilson have taken first and second away from Will Rogers, or Bill Dodgers, if you talk to some other people in the Charlotte area. He's got a few aliases as well. Flying Hawaiian out of Maui, Hawaii. And then
trouble. Saw it there on the screen. That's Gabe Wood, actually, that's gone around. That's Gabe Wood who winds up against the barrier, and he just lost it all on his own. He got in the grass and couldn't get it off in time and spun it across the other way. He's lucky he had a gap behind him where nobody came across, when he came across, nobody got him. Wow.
Did indeed get lucky there. That's a common theme we've seen. Anytime we've seen tires get off of the actual asphalt, tarmac, curbs, racing surface, as it were, here at the Oostenrijk ring, we've seen drivers get into trouble either there or on the exit of turn 4. We saw Gary Sexton run into problems earlier in this race as we now go on board with the Josh Bilicki machine, newly christened 77 for Spire Motorsports. He'll be taking over full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2022. Bilicki with a good run here, and again, another driver with some road course chops and prowess who also knows how to get it done on the ovals. Might be one of Will Rogers' biggest competitors in that sense. Also of note, I want to roll back just a little bit because you were talking about pit stops earlier. The driver with the freshest tires in this field and the highest driver in the running order who got fresh rubber during the yellow flag cycle of pit stops, David Schildhouse, running in 6th and trying to hold Colin Fern at bay for 7th.
And with Schildhouse, the amount of pace that he's carried, I think James says something to if he's got the freshest tires in the field, because he's got the advantage of how quick he's been naturally, and then the advantage of the tires, and the strategy is ultimately what could step him into the right direction and potentially get him more positions down the line. Of course, Schildhouse, like we mentioned earlier, James, a playoff leader going into tonight's event at this track. So Schildhouse has a lot to ride on, and if he's got some momentum going into this race and throughout the event up to this point, it's only going to help his case to just extend the cushion and be able to keep himself away from that round of 10 cut line as much as possible. And as he's catching up to the 52 of Garrett Smithley, this may be another pass which will enter him to the top 5 once again in the SimSeeds Porsche Challenge. So no doubt the 20 of Schildhouse has been on a tear really throughout the first stint up to this point, and he is really reeling in the 52.
It's a mindset thing, I think, this season for David Schildhouse. In season 3, I think he didn't necessarily expect to be as successful as he was, and managed to find himself in the playoffs, find himself in the hunt pretty deep in the season, and just couldn't quite get the win that he needed to shake the monkey off his back. And then turn around to season 4, and there's been a renewed focus. He came into this season knowing that he wanted to be successful, and that he wanted to get the job done, and that he wanted to go after this title. And it's almost like, I think of an old Mike Smith cartoon from way, way back in the day when the late great Dale Earnhardt was chasing an 8th championship alongside Bobby Labonte in the 2000 season, and it had Earnhardt doing a whole bunch of various things. It was, what are you eating? 8. What are you listening to? 8. How many fries do you want on your plate, or burgers do you want in your meal? 8. Everything was focused on that 8th title, and that's sort of the way I've seen David Schildhouse carry himself with this run in Season 4 Monday Night Racing presented by Rowdy Energy. It's, you see him on Twitter. What's he tweeting about? Focusing on that Monday Night Racing title. You go watch his Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Schildhouse. What's he focused on? Trying to win this Monday Night Racing title. You hear him in Racing Spaces on Tuesday nights. What is he talking about? Trying to win a Monday Night Racing title. It is absolutely blinders on mentally for Schildhouse. He wants it. You're seeing the performance tonight, which, I think he'd say isn't necessarily his best car track combo, but it's a strong run for him and a strong run for Ryan Vargas as well.
Well, and Schildhouse talked about how much he needed to practice for this race. It's not a car he's familiar with. It's not a track he's really familiar with. So with that double-edged sword, he had to really, really focus if he wanted to have a shot here tonight at really helping cement himself so he doesn't have to worry at Homestead, even though I'm sure he would love to win Homestead anyway and build more of a cushion for later rounds. Right now, David Schildhouse, if he isn't the favorite for the title at this moment, he should be, because he has really, really impressed a lot of people with his run tonight, and I think that's only going to increase throughout these last couple of races. As you saw, he got a little sideways there. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm saying he's able to get the job done as Garrett Smithley locks it up behind him. Here comes Colin Fern, another playoff driver trying to get by him. That is for P6.
And it's the same kind of theme that I think we've been building towards, especially in the second half of this race. You look at the drivers who we've talked about that have the ability to go fight for a title. And what do they do well? They run well on the road courses and the ovals. Will Rogers, there. Adam Cabot, there. David Schildhouse, there. Colin Fern, there. 4 drivers, 2 of whom have been in Championship 4 races in this series before. Cabot, of course, was part of that group. In
trouble, James, for Raja Caruth. Raja Caruth has crashed. He was inside the top 10, and he is crab walking. That thing is destroyed. Big damage for Raja Caruth under the bridge. We'll get a replay here of what happened as he was coming around through. Oh, this is really interesting because I just happened to look over at my scoring and saw he was stopped and going in the wrong direction in a hurry. And it looks like he spun it multiple times, not once but twice. Here's the first one. Coming around, we've seen this corner have a lot of issues, and nonetheless, he gets too wide, comes down and catches. Oh, I'm not sure who that is. That might be Brad Perez, I think, again. Another wreck for Perez. As we're going to go on board, it is indeed the 60 of Brad Perez. Carruth spun it again after that contact and wound up at the inside of the racetrack instead. A bad night, good night for Raja Carruth before this. It's tumbled down the hill big time.
There's major suspension damage to the Market Rebellion Crypto Porsche that Raja Carruth is piloting for Alpha Prime Racing. He spun it 3 times over the 8-9 context. Now a 4th time.
Just did it again, yep.
Just trying to shift to get it back to pit road. So this could get very, very interesting so far as the points are concerned. And here's Boris Cook's on board with all this. Really, really big move from him to avoid all this and just, sort of sneak it through a whoop, whoop. Just full, somewhere between Chris Berman calling an NFL player sliding through and Days of Thunder and get through the middle of that mess did Boris Cook go. Meanwhile, we flip back to Raja here very quickly. That in turn almost guarantees Kenneth Bueno that he is going to have to win at Homestead, Miami in the Cup car next Monday night if he wants any shot at making the round of 7.
No doubt about it, James. And he does have a faster pair, so he can fix his car rather quickly. Only problem is he's already a lap down on the track, and he is pretty much limping with that bent suspension in a pit road. So it is getting real ugly for the driver of the 44. And now look at the battle all the way through here. This is Josh Balicki getting around the 52 of Garrett Smithley. He's on an attack here on what's going to be fellow playoff competitor Colin Fern in the 86. And it looks like Smithley and his Rick Rowe Racing car kind of fallen off in pace over the past couple laps. There he overshoots a bit in turn 4, trying to get to the rear end of the driver of the 54 in Balicki, but it seems as though they're going to be able to clear. And now Balicki, Fern, all within range. They're all trying to catch up to more playoff drivers in Shieldhouse and Cabot as we take a look on board with Ryan Vargas once again.
Vargas hanging out in the 13th position, riding just behind DJ Cummings, who was victorious in the Road to Glory race earlier this evening. Meanwhile, we will remind you that tonight's broadcast of the Monday Night Racing Pro Series is brought to you by our presenting partner for this evening and presenting partner of the SimSeats Porsche Challenge, SimSeats. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality driving simulators, including motion systems, custom fabricated parts, and complete turnkey iRacing packages, all made in the United States of America. Their customer base includes all kinds of drivers, from amateurs to professionals, and their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Don't limit your track time to the weekend. Visit www.sim-seats.com today for more information. How intriguing a storyline that's going to be at Homestead. Raja Carruth needing to win. And remember, when we went there with the Cup car a year ago almost, he was right in the thick of the race. And when we went there with the trucks in August, and he was part of the Championship 4 for Season 3, he was right in the thick of that and just got caught out by a bad yellow flag pit cycle and just didn't quite have the time to run back to the front. But he had the fastest truck that night, no question. So he's shown the speed. He'll have to deliver on that level in order to have a shot and making it into the round of 7. But then again, he had to deliver in a similar kind of position just to make the playoffs at Chicagoland a few weeks ago. So it's not like he'll be a stranger to the pressure. I just think he'd probably like to not have to have his back against the wall all the time. As we go back on board with Brandon Brown, currently rides 20.
How about this, though, guys? Anders Krohn had 2 cars that were laps down, Stalneck and Kallenbach, battling through turn 10. They didn't get out of the way, so that's opened up the door. Here comes Stefan Wilson. He's back within a car length of the race leader. He had fallen back by almost a second throughout this green flag run. Well, thanks to the battling with those lap cars, Krohn came over the radio and was not too happy, said something about blue flag, blue flag. Well, Stefan Wilson, he's right in perfect position, right on the back bumper of his teammate.
So it's the hardpoint drivers here who are 1 and 2, and they have a little battle for the race lead before we get done with this event. Meanwhile, Taylor Burris, what do you have from pit road?
Well, pit stop cycles are about to be happening here pretty soon for the final time. Some of these drivers will not be able to make it all the way. One driver, though, who's actually in a good position, actually a couple, are drivers such as Will Rogers, Adam Cabot, David Schildhouse, and Colin Byrne. All of those are sitting inside the top 6 right now, and if they continue this trend right here and finish strong, these drivers could possibly be able to have a chance to clinch their opportunity to move on into the round of 7. Meanwhile, 2 more drivers have decided to take it behind the wall. Anthony Alfredo, Brett Baldeck, their nights are done. Michael Massey, also another one of those drivers who is out of tonight's race.
3 drivers that may help Rajah Ruth's case just a little bit, but it won't help all that much. He's going to have to dig next week. Justin Malillo with a solid run here in 22nd, just trying to hold out and keep, I believe that's Stephen Ellis behind him, so could have a fun little battle for 22nd and 23rd, but those 2 racing a little bit further back and working with the bare feet tonight is Justin Malillo. Good look there at the pedal cam, which we don't really get the chance to see all that much, but you see how he's got a Formula-style rim, actually not all that different from the rims used in these Porsche 911 RSRs, and then the footwork as well. Not the old Formula 1 team, as I stop and think about it, but just a lot of shifting as we now turn our way over towards the front straightaway, riding on board with Malillo, and also get a good look at the Rowdy energy cans over on the backdrop of Malillo's setup.
Yeah, we call this driver here, Justin Malillo, the Rowdy man for a reason. He's usually got a Rowdy energy in hand. I don't think he's going to have it tonight, over the course of tonight, just because it's a road course. You got to be a little more concentrated. You don't have as many straights to go and take a sip of that Rowdy energy while you're on the way to the next corner, but nonetheless, Malillo doing a solid job right now. I mean, he's 23rd at the moment, but so where he started and just trying to make sure he can get over this race. Malillo, we mentioned, close to the win a couple of times within the past couple of weeks, but definitely a lot of consistent finishes, no doubt, for that 53 car, and just going to look forward to Homestead of Miami next week as the battle for the lead heats up once again. Here comes Stefan Wilson to the outside going to turn 2.
Not going to have the optimum line going into this hairpin, but if he times this right, gets on the brake early, he might be able to cross over Anders Krohn coming out of the corner and working their way towards turn 4. That's exactly what he's going to try and do, but Krohn's going to shut the door on him and have that inside lane once again going to 4. So it's going to take a little bit more work from Stefan Wilson, but he is there, Jacob Hitz, no question.
Yeah, Krohn getting into turn 1. He caught the curb. He killed the curb, and that's what got him way out of shape. It pushed him wide, and that allowed Wilson to really close it in. But now Wilson kind of got pushed off there, I think, battling too aggressive. They still got a pit stop to make yet. Speaking of, TJ Majors just pitted. I don't know. But I think Wilson's just going to take a breath here, step back, relax. If Krohn makes another mistake, okay, he might try and pounce again, but I really think he's going to wait until they make their final stops to really go after the throat of his teammate here.
Although, for what it's worth, those 2 have been running the fastest laps of the race outright in this most recent handful. They dropped down into the 126s in the second stint for the first time all night long, and last time by there were only maybe a handful of tenths off, maybe 3 or 4 tenths off of their outright fastest laps of the race. As we will now go on board with James Bickford a little bit further back, driving for Charlotte Phoenix, currently running a little bit towards the middle of the pack here. Hits.
Yeah, I mean, that strategy, I think, really hurt him. He was running right around the same spot anyway, then decided to stay out. Basically had to get out and push the car around. So, and he still had to pit anyway and got the penalty and had to go all the way to the back. But P12, a good rebound for Bickford. We'll see what he does here with his final stop and, any strategy that he may have up his sleeve.
Good look here at that. Shall we call it? I think more teal than Robin's Egg blue. It's certainly got elements of Robin's Egg blue in it, but it's certainly more of a teal and maybe pieces of electric blue and black machine there, kind of played on.
Yeah, it's a nice look there. It kind of reminded me of the E-Cascadia car that Brad Keselowski ran a little bit earlier in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's a minimalist paint scheme, though. I mean, just the lines running around through the car, just outlining some of the outline features of this Porsche 911 RSR. We usually see him with a lot more bright, vibrant car when he goes into the Cup Series or the Xfinity Series cars or most of the other vehicles we run here in MNR. But nonetheless, Bickford doing a pretty good job so far as he's trying to catch up to DJ Cummings. And as we look further back through the field, James, there is a battle for P25. Kallenbach way out of shape out of turn 10. Checked up the 41, and now here comes some lead lap drivers. That's David Schildhouse, Garrett Smithley for position.
Yeah, and don't forget that Schildhouse and Smithley are racing for 7th and 8th. Those could be valuable points for Schildhouse in particular, as Gabe Wood will just pull hard to the left and let those two fighting for proper race positions really go after him. Meanwhile, here's the battle for the race lead. 4 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock now. So if you do the math on lap times, probably call it about 3 laps. It's going to be close. It's going to be within, I think, about 5 or 10 seconds, segments.
Yeah, I'm at a loss now. We've got 4 minutes left, and these guys still haven't pitted. Can they make it to the end now? I'm confused now. I didn't look up at the clock until you said, okay, 4 minutes left, and that's where I was like, wait a second now, what? Unless they're gonna just take it, run it dry, and then pit and have like a 2-lap dash. I'm really surprised that we haven't seen anybody come to pit road.
Well, that might be part of running under the yellow flag and pitting under the yellow. That's probably why. That would explain a lot if you can make it all the way, but that certainly is a concern that these drivers may need to be mindful of, because we're on the edge of the fuel window and we're on the edge of the clock as well. So what you could do, if you really wanted to, you could slow these laps down just a little bit and make sure that you're only running at this point what I think would be somewhere in the ballpark of, call it 2 instead of the 3. I could be terrible on math, but we could be figuring that out as we go on board with Norwich, New York's Colin Ferd, who won at Las Vegas earlier in this season to make his way to the playoffs. And yet again, a quiet run from him, I think, but this is the kind of run that if you're a playoff driver, you want. You look at a lot of the drivers that are competing for the title: Rogers, Cabot, Balicki, Fern, Schildhouse, everybody up in the top and whole station.
And for Fern, definitely good that he's performing well on this road course. And I think at the Daytona road course, we saw just how good of a left and right driver he was. And obviously with the win at Las Vegas, helped him accelerate into the playoffs. And the MX-5 race definitely did him good for experience on this time around here in Austria. You take a look at battle, though, beneath around the top 10. This is where Ryan Vargas sits in P13. He's around DJ Cummings. There's Joshua Slate not too far behind. There's DJ Cummings right there. James Bickford, Brian Boris Cook. So a handful of cars here, James, that Vargas could pass, and in turn, I think if he can get by them in the final minutes of this SimSeeds Porsche Challenge, it's going to mean some extra bling, some extra points going into Homestead of Miami.
Not going to complain about that, because we've seen stranger things happen, especially with the late green-white checkers that tend to appear at Homestead Miami in Monday Night Racing. It's been a pretty consistent theme with that track. Every time we've gone there, I would be surprised if next week ends up as an exception, as you see some of the battles all throughout the field working our way towards maybe 1 lap to go here. As Anders Krohn just made his way through turn 4. Lap times are about 1:27. So we'll drop underneath that mark right about now. And Krohn is only in the middle of turns 8 and 9. So this should be the white flag in the SimSeeds Porsche Challenge coming up next time by.
How about this battle for P5, though? 2 championship contenders in the playoffs with Balicki and Colin Fern. Fern made the pass and was able to get by. We'll see if Balicki has anything else for him here, because this could be ever so important. Balicki flashing his lights to Colin Fern, letting him know, I'm still here. I'm not letting you have it this easy. As we'll just have to wait and see where this white flag, could come. I would assume that this would be it, but I know we can get a little bit chaotic sometimes with these timed races on when the white flag actually comes.
Trouble for DJ Cummings, who had been up in the top 10. We heard him potentially go around, and you see it over in turn 4. Looks like he may have gotten on the brakes too hard. I have a feeling this is another lockup case or maybe an aggressive send case. Yeah, that's trying to get on the brakes too hard to make the pass on the inside and just not having enough. But back to the race lead here. Underscrone clear by 0.8 of a second. Stephen Wilson is giving it everything. Those two racing for first and second. Meanwhile, we'll keep our ears peeled and eyes open for Colin Fern and Josh Bilicki. Two battles to pay attention to on the racetrack.
And Fern and Bilicki are definitely not giving up. And think about where Bilicki was going into this round of 10 race. He was below the cut line, not by a lot of points. It was only 5 going into this race, but this is going to help him dramatically. I think whether he can get around Fern or not, he's still going to have a really big payday going into Homestead of Miami, because Carruth has had a bad night with the penalty in the midway portion of the race. We know Preston Pardis isn't here. We know Kyle Busch also isn't in this race as well. So for Bilicki, this is a really big opportunity to pounce on them and to gain some more momentum and get himself over the cut line before the moment. Looks like Anders Krohn is going to win this race.
Anders Krohn indeed will pick up his first career victory and the first ever victory for a Norwegian driver in the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy. He wins the Sim Seats Porsche Challenge at the Österreich. Meanwhile, it's Colin Fern who's able to get that final spot ahead of Josh Bilicki as we see the rest of the field come across the start finish line and wrap up their race.
Shieldhouse almost had Garrett Smithley coming to the line. Smithley was able to get back by him, and I mean, Shieldhouse just threw it in that last corner trying to find something to stick. He couldn't, so he's going to come across in P8. A great battle between those two there at the end as well.
Really, really good stuff there at the end of this as we go through the full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished in this SimSeats Porsche Challenge. It's all Anders Krohn and Stephen Wilson with the Hardpoint Racing colors up at the front of the field, getting it done. And Will Rogers finishing P3. We'll talk to those drivers in just a few moments. Adam Cabot rolling in P4. Colin Fern finished in the 5th spot. 6th was Josh Bilicki. 7th was Garrett Smithley. David Shieldhouse finished 8th. It was Garrett Miller and James Bickford completing the top 10, Kev.
Brian Boris Cook in the 63 was in P11 at the end of this race. Ryan Vargas, a great race for him. Overall, ends up in P12. Brandon Brown looks to be the next one in it. Actually, Max Kennan is P12. 13th will go to the 1 of Josh Slate. DJ Cummings will be in 14th. Rounding out the top 15 will be the 13 of Gary Sexton before you find Stephen Ellis in the 46th. The Traxxon.GG colors of Justin Melillo in 17th. There's Brian Boris Cook. It looks to be in 18th. And then Brandon Brown, Ford Martin seem to round out the top 20.
And everybody from 21st on back, a lap down or worse. Brad Perez finishes 21st with Steve Fonten 22nd. Then Seth Eggert, Devin Henry, Case Kallenbach, the top 25. Carl Irvin, Matt Stallnecht, we saw his accident. He finishes P27. Raja Carruth was inside the top 10, crashed it. He finishes 2 laps down in 28th. Then it's Gabe Wood, 5 laps down in 29th. He had some issues. TJ Majors did not finish in P30. Anthony Alfredo, Brett Baldeck, and Michael Massey also parked their cars tonight before the checkered flag. Gentlemen, that's your field of 33. Why don't we talk to our top 3?
Talk to our top 3 and talk to our race winner. It is Anders Krohn, who goes to victory lane. And Anders, you've been near spots like this for a little bit. It hasn't necessarily come together, especially on the road courses, completely like it did tonight. But it wasn't necessarily easy for you either because you had the lap traffic issue that drew Stephen Wilson back into the battle for the lead. So just take us through what you saw there and what happened, and then how tough it was to hold off Stephen in the final 15 minutes of this race.
Yeah, it was highly stressful, let me tell you, because as you rightly said, I've been close at certain races before, but haven't been able to put it together, and I was determined to do that today. And there was time there where I thought it was all gone away, but yeah, fortunately hung on to it. And Stefan, you know, he and I race a ton together, so it was awesome getting to race as closely with him as we did. But oh man, I am drenched. That was awesome.
So you work for it, no question about it, which means it ends up being maybe a little bit more fun, a little bit more valuable to you. But, you know, what does it mean to you to be a winner in Monday Night Racing, given that you really have had to dig for this one?
It means a lot, and the level here is so high, and you have drivers of such diverse backgrounds, and I think that's what makes this series so awesome. You have people with NASCAR background, IndyCar background, all sorts of different types of racing. So it just brings together this great group of drivers, and so appreciative of Ford Martin for letting me join in. And it was Steph Wilson who initially pulled for me to get into the league, and Ford accepted. So yeah, just thankful to be here and just having an absolute ball. So hopefully I can start joining on a bit more of a consistent basis in these races and actually contend on a more frequent basis.
Also of note here, you now are not only a winner in Monday Night Racing, but you are the first Norwegian to win.
Oh, well, there you go. I'll take that.
I have to believe that means a little bit to you as well, to bring a little bit of notoriety to, by all accounts, what is one of the, at minimum, better countries in the world. I feel like I'm selling it. You could probably sell it better than we could, though.
Well, I'll take it any way I can, whether I'm from Norway or where I'm from. But no, that was great.
Anders, congratulations on your first career victory in the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy. Thanks so much, as always, for the time. We look forward to seeing you next week at Homestead, Miami.
All right. Thanks ever so much. Have a good one.
There's Anders Krohn, who comes home P1, a winner in Monday Night Racing. At last, we slide to his de facto teammate for the evening, a man who's had a pretty big day in the real-life world with all the news that he pumped out. Had a pretty big run tonight at the Oostenrijk Ring. Stefan Wilson is with Kenneth Bueno.
Big day indeed for Stefan Wilson, and a big race on the racetrack tonight. You finished P2, and I want to talk about that battle with Anders Krohn. I mean, you'd beaten him on the pole in qualifying, and you two looked like you two had the cruise control on ever since the drop of the green flag here at this track. Walk us through what that was like, especially in that final segment, going at it with Krohn for the race lead.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Me and Anders are really good friends off the racetrack, and we battled really hard against each other in real life many years ago. So it was very much reliving that, and just a really fun battle overall. Really glad to have got the pole, and then I think that whole first stint, Anders was sitting there behind me, just learning a few tricks of the trade here. So he was able to pick some of it up towards the end, and just the difference of being having to come from a few cars back. I think when he started, he grabbed P2 straight away, and I had to pass Adam and then pass Will, and that just gave him enough of a gap where the draft wasn't helping me as much, and I had to push really hard to close it, and closed it. But at that point, my tires were pretty done, so it was just I was just doing the best I could to try and make a move happen, and he didn't make a mistake the whole race. So just an amazing job by him.
And it seems as though you guys were like the dynamic duo. Most of the time throughout this race, you were within a couple car lengths of each other or within cars of each other. But I want to talk about the split at the middle of the race, the halfway caution, which brought everybody together. Were there any notes that you took in that first stint? Like you said, with Anders just learning a little bit through that first segment, were there anything that you learned specifically that you looked forward in that second stint to take over and to try to apply to this Porsche 911 car?
Yeah, not so much really on the driving side. We were that whole first stint, we were kind of saving fuel and just trying to make sure that if we did pit under that yellow, that we could in fact get to the end and not have to make another pit stop. So yeah, that's something that we learned in that first stint, that as long as we saved a little bit of fuel, we were good to go the 30 minutes. And from there on, it was just that we were unleashed and we were both just battling as hard as we could.
I think let's talk more Porsche, why don't we? You've got the big news today that you're going to be making your Rolex 24 debut at the Daytona International Speedway, where you'll be joining Hardport Racing. And I know you and Anders both pulled out these paint schemes. So tell us a little bit about that opportunity with the Hardpoint and how excited you are to race in the Rolex 24 this year.
Yeah, no, it's a race that I've wanted to do for a very long time, and just never had the right opportunity come about. And this is actually it's the 60th running of the race, and it's 10 years since Justin won the race outright. So it's got special meaning, and I've got many fond memories of watching him race there, and hoping that we can go and make some good memories ourselves this month.
Gonna definitely be looking for that Wilson nameplate on the Porsche 911 GT3.
It's a good-looking car.
It is. I will say. I think the renders look good. The cars on track look good. But Stefan, want to congratulate you on behalf of Podium Esports on this second place finish here tonight from Austria, and of course, wishing you the best of luck for Homestead Miami next week and the rest of the MNR season.
Thank you very much.
Stefan Wilson in the 25, able to bring the hardpoint Porsche 911 car to P2. We'll kick it back to third, where you'll find the highest running playoff driver, Jacob Hitz, the 24, Will Rogers.
Well, certainly a good run tonight here from Austria. It helps build more momentum, move it on through the playoffs. Talk about your night, because you were up toward the front, led a couple laps there with that strategy, and really had a strong enough car that you could have had a shot to win the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Decent race there at Red Bull Ring and the Porsche RSR. I think my number 24 Space Station Gaming Porsche was pretty decent, but I honestly did not do enough practice either during the week or during the beginning of this race session where I could pick up enough speed, just like what Stefan and Anders had. Those guys were lights out fast, but yeah, overall, decent run for us. Glad we could build some momentum on the playoffs and go into a few of these next races with a little less pressure, I guess.
You were close to the cutoff line coming into tonight. Tonight certainly helps, gets you away from that line a little bit. Still, is there any sort of stress, worrying going into Homestead next week, since next week's a cutoff?
Oh, man, I think this is my third season doing Monday Night Racing. I think most people know that I really enjoy the series, but it's no pressure. It's all about having fun, honestly, and hanging out with my buddies, running good. Of course, you never want to wreck and you want to do well, but at the end of the day, we're here for fun. So no pressure, just going to vibe, and we'll see how Homestead goes. Statistically, not one of my better racetracks. I know we can run well, but as far as winning or something like that, I might have to work on my game a little bit, but just going to have fun. We'll see.
Well, best of luck next week, Will, in that playoff battle. P3 tonight, though, from Austria. Builds a little bit of insurance heading into that final race of the playoffs. P3 tonight, congratulations.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. See you next week.
Will Rogers, P3. Back over to you, James.
There's your podium finishers from this SimSeat Porsche Challenge for the Monday Night Racing Pro Series presented by Rowdy Energy, and it sets up a very exciting conclusion to this round of 10. We're going to have a lot of drivers with a need to go for it. And a former NASCAR Cup Series champion joining the field next week. One Bobby Labonte will be part of next week's race. We go to Homestead Miami Speedway. We're going to have Labonte in the booth for our event, which will feature the cars in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's the Gen 6s, not the Gen 7s, the next gens as they're known. But either case, should be very entertaining to close out the round of 10 for the Season 4 playoffs presented by Rowdy Energy. And you'll see that broadcast, of course, as always, on twitch.tv/Podium2. Podium Facebook and YouTube pages, and the Monday Night Racing Twitter page starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. So, there's a lot you can talk about tonight for sure, Kenneth Bueno, but I almost wonder if the focus on tonight might be more in the way that it's set up a lot of the stories for what we should see next week.
Yeah, with the fact that this was a 3-race playoff round in the round of 10, you could argue that this is the mediary race. This is kind of where drivers wanted to either see where they were after Talladega and be like, okay, this is what I got to do. This is the plan I have to execute. And then they tried to find out. Unfortunately for some, it wasn't the best races for them, but ultimately we had a great race to the finish. Anders Krohn, Stefan Wilson, I mean, a great battle between the two. No, they're not playoff drivers, but they brought a lot here in Austria tonight. And Homestead Miami, you know how I feel about that track, James, a hometown track of mine. And on the oval this time instead of the Roval, it's going to be a lot of fun. The NASCAR Cup Series cars can run from the bottom to the top. So when we see the playoff drivers do that, with their backs against the wall or not, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to cut it down to 7.
I figured you were going to get something in about it being your hometown track, but then again, I can't fault you for that either, as South Floridian that you are. Jacob Hitz, you were decidedly not from South Florida. Pennsylvania is a little bit farther away, but should be exciting. And I almost think if we look back on tonight, maybe the biggest story was just how hard it was for these drivers to tackle this track, which isn't necessarily the most difficult of road courses, but it underscores just how tricky it can be to road race quickly. And I would like to think there's a newfound appreciation for the difficulty of this discipline if you haven't had the chance to watch it all that much before on MNR.
There's no doubt about it that tonight, I think, really opened a lot of eyes to, well, it's not easy driving around this racetrack, and, new circuit for a lot of people. I think that was part of the amount of mistakes that we saw tonight. And you mentioned how this is going to build into next week. Yeah, Raja Karuth. That's a storyline in and of itself. It was up at the front at Talladega, couldn't get it done. Outside, looking in, moving into today. Had a strong car, was rolling really, really well. Crashes, winds up in the back of the field. He's going to be way far back, really looking for a win. He's going to be battling with Preston Pardis, Kyle Busch, who couldn't make it tonight, to try and win next week. And I think that, we've seen Raja have really strong cars over these last couple of weeks. Chicagoland, even the All-Star race, and last week at Talladega in the trucks. I think he's going to come out and swing for the fences. He may make a lot of people mad, but I think at the end of the day, he's doing what he has to do to try and make it and move on to the next round, no matter what it's going to do to somebody else. If it hurts another playoff driver, if it hurts somebody that's just racing for a win, he might care in a week or 2 weeks after Homestead. I don't think he's really going to care that much in the moment. He's going to be aggressive, roll up those sleeves, and just send it and see what he can do, because at the end of the day, he's fighting for a championship. He wants this. He's going to have to do everything in his power to get it done.
Yeah, don't forget, you got Raja and Preston Pardis and Kyle Busch, who are basically in must-win situations next week, so it should be a lot of fun. There's your playoff grid. Get a good look at them. Also worth noting, we've got a few events in the world of Podium eSports coming up over the course of the next week. You've got S-Rock coming up on Wednesday night from Charlotte Motor Speedway. You've got Operation eMotorsport iRacing League coming from Daytona on Tuesday night. Go to the iRacing Live platform. S-Rock on the Podium eSports Twitch channel. You've got the iRacing Short Course National Series from Bark River coming your way on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium eSports YouTube and Facebook pages. And then you've got the SimMax Cup Series powered by MPI from Bristol Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern on twitch.tv/Podium eSports. And to keep up with us, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitch at Podium eSports. Oh, by the way, Podium 500 signups are now available too on the Podium eSports website. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we get closer to February 13th. A big thanks to everyone who helps make Monday Night Racing possible, for the whole staff, Ford Martin, Paul Sutton, and Josh Mendoza at Monday Night Racing, for Sisto Scaramouza, Gary Sexton, and John Theodore at Podium eSports, for our camera builder, Doug Beard, for Dougie Beard, overlay builder, Michael Hall, social media covered by Cameron Alverdon, and our team on tonight's broadcast, our producer, Ryan Bauer, pit reporter, Taylor Burris, and my colleagues in the booth, Kenneth Bueno and Jacob Hitz. I am James Punt, the voice of Podium eSports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the SimC Sports Challenge. We look forward to seeing you next Monday night from Homestead Miami Speedway.